There's an attack on some girls right now that are playing sports. It was summer of 2021. I was looking through some legislation at the federal level and I was thinking, wait, why are there bills being introduced that are saying that anyone could play in girls' sports? And we hadn't seen it happen too much yet. The whole Riley Gaines and Leah Thomas situation hadn't happened yet. But I saw the bill language and thought, well, if there's bills allowing this to happen, it's eventually going to start happening, right? I thought this is not fair. I have to speak out against this.
You're saying that comfort is so accessible here in the United States, and that comfort leads to an apathetic spirit.
You know, discipleship really is just making a choice to be a Christ follower and submitting your life every day to the call of God on your life.
Our mission is to disciple young leaders just like you, helping you become everything God has called you to be. We're here to have authentic conversations about the real topics that our generation wrestles with, whether it's how to share the gospel, what it means to be a true disciple, or how to navigate faith in today's world. Our goal is to equip you with the tools, knowledge, and wisdom you need to lead in your generation. Join us every other week as we learn to be next-gen leaders together. Welcome to the 1630 Show. I'm your host, Abby Sexton. We are a discipleship ministry developing next-gen leaders just like you to grow and thrive in the calling God has placed on your life. We want you to understand your identity in the Lord, walk with you as you discover God's calling, and send you out on mission as the leader God calls you to be. Together, we can pray, vote, and engage to leave a lasting impact on our nation. Today, we are joined by Sophia Lorey. Sophia is a Vanguard University graduate and former college soccer player. She's a passionate pro-life advocate and has interned with Family Research Council and Young Women for America in Washington, D.C. She currently serves as an ambassador for Alliance Defending Freedom and Live Action. In 2022, she became outreach director for the California Family Council, focusing on advancing faith-based values in California. Well, Sophia, thank you so much for being on our show today. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, me too. Well, tell us a little bit more about you, about your background, and about your work at California Family Council.
Yeah, so I'm the outreach director at California Family Council, and it's our mission to advance God's design for life, family, and liberty across California's churches, capital, and culture. So we're doing a lot of work at the state capitol, really watching what bills the California legislature is introducing. We go through them. There's about 2,000 every year, and we go through them and we find out which ones are affecting our biblical values. There ends up being around 50 to 60, and so a lot of times we are unfortunately opposing this legislation. It's an attack on our biblical values, whether it's on marriage, life, education, on girls, on sports. We see a lot of that happening now. And then luckily we do have a couple we'll be able to support, and we've supported some bills this year. And so our goal is just to wake up the community and wake up churches to what's happening at the state capitol.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to ask you about Save Girls Sports specifically. I'm just curious kind of how you got involved in that. I know you were a female athlete, and so I'd just love to hear more about your experience and kind of what led you to get involved in Save Girls Sports to begin with.
Yeah, so I played soccer all my life, and then I just absolutely fell in love with the sport. And by 10 years old, I knew I wanted to be a college soccer player. Like, and when people are like, what do you want to do for your career? I'm like, college soccer player, thinking that was a career. But that's what I wanted to do. That's what I was passionate about. And I ended up being able to do that. And I went to Vanguard University in Southern California and played soccer, and it helped pay for my education, and it brought me so many amazing life lessons. It brought me the best friends, and it really taught me a lot that I'm now taking on post-college, post-sports into my current career. And then I noticed, there's an attack on some girls right now that are playing sports. It was summer of 2021. I was looking through some legislation at the federal level, and I was thinking, wait, why are there bills being introduced that are saying that anyone could play in girls' sports? And we hadn't seen it happen too much yet. The whole Riley Gaines and Leah Thomas situation hadn't happened yet. But I saw the bill language and thought, well, if there's bills allowing this to happen, it's eventually going to start happening, right? I thought this is not fair. I have to speak out against this. And then all of a sudden, the whole situation blew up. We saw the Riley Gaines, Leah Thomas situation. And since then, we're seeing it happen up and down every state across the nation. And I knew that if I didn't stand up and speak out for the injustice I was seeing, current 10-year-olds aren't going to be able to achieve the same goals and dreams that I had, that I was able to achieve because I just worked hard enough. But they won't get that no matter how hard they work because of boys. And so I knew I had to take a stand.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, from a biblical perspective, right, just like you talked about with your brothers, men and women were created biologically different. We just are.
So can you talk about, kind of from a biblical perspective too, why should we care about this issue? I mean, obviously the Bible addresses things like, justice and truth and all of that. But I'm just curious from your perspective, why do you think that matters as a Christian to care about these things?
Yeah, you hear a lot now from Christians that I think are a little too scared to speak up or don't feel like they're supposed to speak up. They start to say, well, the Bible doesn't touch on that directly. The Bible doesn't say anything about this directly. And yes, the Bible doesn't say anything directly that we should stand up against boys and girls sports. There's not a Bible verse that directly says that. Yet, we literally have Genesis 1:27, and in the first chapter of the first book of the Bible, it is clear that God made us male or female, and God doesn't make mistakes. And so we have to stand up for the truth of this, that boys, no matter what they're identifying as, don't belong in girls' sports. And as long as we continue to allow them or affirm them in this trans ideology, we're going directly against the Bible. It's not loving to affirm a delusion. It's not loving to affirm a lie. And when Christians are saying, I don't want to speak up against this because maybe they think it's hateful, because that rhetoric is spread often, that it's hateful to say these things. It's hateful to say that boys shouldn't be in girls' sports. But at the end of the day, as Christians, we have the truth. And as we allow this, if we allow this and don't speak up against it, we are then saying that the truth isn't the truth. We're now ignoring what the Bible has to say. Again, if we can't stand up for the first chapter of the first book of the Bible, what can we be expected to stand up for? And so I think Christians need to stand up for it, and we need to remember that it's loving to say the truth. It's not loving to act like God's truth isn't good enough. The second we try to say, oh, I don't want to say anything about that because it might hurt someone's feelings, why are we apologizing for the truth of God? And so when the Bible's that clear that we are male or female, we can't be lying to anyone about the situation.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The Lord cares about justice, and he wants to see that for his people. So, yeah, I love that answer. Well, I'm curious, too, just kind of what are you seeing both in California and nationwide, just as you're speaking or working on legislation in California? What is kind of the state of things right now in terms of Safe Girl Sports? What are you seeing, kind of victories, challenges? What have you seen?
Yeah, well, there's been a huge change over the past 3 years. When I first started saying this stuff, again, people said, that doesn't really happen. People weren't bought in. People thought we were making it up. People thought we were saying it's a one-off. So the good change is people now believe this does happen. It's sad that they believe it now because it's happening so much they can't ignore it. And so it's heartbreaking what the girls are going through. But because of that, because of girls speaking out against it, people are ready to bring attention to it and expose what's happening. The public has woken up and they know that this truly is happening everywhere. And so we've seen some great changes, even with this new administration. I mean, we saw a great executive order put in place to protect girls' sports. But when that came out, I saw a lot of social media posts that said, great, girls' sports are saved. Boys aren't in girls' sports anymore. What a win. And that's just not the truth of what happened. More so what that executive order was, oh, we have an administration that's on our side, that knows there's a difference between boys and girls, that knows boys don't belong in girls' sports, and they're putting out this executive order, expecting the states to follow it, expecting people to get in line. Yet it's not a legal law anywhere. And so now that's where we're seeing a lot of states are on board, following the executive order, following Title IX. But then we see California. The second that executive order came out, California said, we won't be following it. CIF, which is the governing body of high school sports in California, said we won't be following that executive order. And they just say we're following state law, because California state law says you can play sports, use restrooms or locker rooms based off of gender identity and not sex. That's actually been our state law here since 2013. So people don't realize it's been around that long. So that's been our state law here, and our legislators, people in charge of sports here in the state of California, they just say we're following state law, which evidently shows they're forgetting how basic history, basic public policy, basic government works. Because we do have Title IX that protects girls' sports, and whenever we have that federal ruling, whenever we have Title IX, that supersedes state law, and so they should be following that. And so with all that to say, we're really pushing back on our governor. We're really pushing back on CIF, on the California legislators, urging them to do something. And in the state of California, we actually have just seen the first lawsuit against our state law for violating Title IX. And so that's where I think we'll win this issue in California, will be in the courts. We'll probably only be able to protect girls' sports by some legal rulings here. But overall, we are seeing across the nation, this is an 80-20 issue. This isn't a Democrat Republican issue. This is a common sense issue. I mean, you really don't see any social issue where 80% of Americans agree on it. And this is one of the ones. And that is also reflected in California. Californians are not okay with this. No matter what people think of California, no matter what our governor or legislators might say, California parents, California girls, and even the California boys are pushing back against this. And so I think it's an issue we are definitely going to win sooner rather than later.
That's great. Well, being in a state like California, I'm sure it's difficult a lot of times to kind of face some of these issues, both in that and then it's also just when you're speaking, across the country at different events and things like that. So what has it kind of been like to face the challenges that come with speaking this truth, to boldly speak up for what is right? What kind of challenges have you faced personally, and how has that kind of affected you or your faith, anything at all?
Yes, yeah. So I want to encourage everyone that's listening that it is so freeing to speak the truth. It is so freeing to say what's right. That doesn't mean it's always easy. That doesn't mean there's not pushback, but I want to encourage you to do it because it is the right thing to do. And one of my favorite quotes is when it's the only way evil pursues is when good men do nothing. And so when we know the truth, we have to do something. We have to stand up against it. So yes, there's been events and different times where I've spoken out on the Save Girl Sports issue that it's been I've been welcomed with open arms. People have been excited to hear what's happening in the truth, but there's also been the opposite. I was in Northern California, in Davis, California. It's probably one of the most spiritually dark cities I've ever been in. And I was there to speak to what I thought was going to be maybe 30 or 40 local parents and grandparents that wanted to know what the state law was about this, why this issue is happening with boys and girls sports, and what we can do to stand against it. And that room was filled with protesters, and they had their signs, they had pride painted up and down their arms, they were all masked up, they had all the different flags wrapped around them. And it was evident they weren't in the room just to hear what we had to say. They were there to disrupt and cause chaos. And so I was able to kick off the event, and I was there just to share my story of it, just sharing again of wanting to play college soccer as a 10-year-old. And so as I was speaking at this event where a local moms group actually booked out the room at the library. So this is a public library where they had the room reserved, were allowed to say what they wanted. And I just simply said that girls are losing out of opportunities due to males and females sports. And the crowd went crazy, honestly. They started saying I was misgendering, that I was hateful, all these things. And so it ended up being this whole 10 minutes of chaos until the librarian himself actually shut down the event. And he shut it down not because of the chaos from the protesters, but due to what we were saying. And so that was one of those moments where I realized we are never going to get anything solved as a country if we're not even willing to have these conversations and not agree to disagree, but be able to hear out the people that we disagree with and have these conversations, these calm conversations about these topics. And so we ended up suing the library because it was a county library. The librarian was a government official, and he violated my First Amendment right as well as the other women that were speaking. That led to us winning that lawsuit. They settled. They said, we know what we did was wrong. And we were able to host that event again. But all it did was bring more media attention to let people across the country know what's happening in California. And so that's, I think, such a good reminder to people that what you're doing, again, I thought this was going to go speak to 30 grandparents and parents. And God used evil because he can use evil for good. What man means for bad, God can use for good. And that's what he did in that situation. And just trusting that even when there's pushback, even when there's hate, whether it's the hate comments or the protesters there with a sign or the people that don't agree with you, and sometimes it is family and friends, and that's not always the easiest, you have to trust that God's going to use it for good, whether you see the fruits of that or not in your lifetime. But also knowing that when you know what the Bible has to say on these issues, we can't back down from saying them. And so I know that no matter what pushback I get, whether it's sometimes losing friends, whether it's sometimes getting those crazy Instagram messages where I'm like, I can't believe a human being would type out these comments to another human. It's all okay because the Bible's so clear that if the world hates us, first of all, they hated him first. And we're not of this world. And I know God's won the ultimate battle. So I just have to be here to keep pushing and doing what's right and trust that at the end of the day, we know what happens.
That's so good. It's so wild to me that there can be people on the other side of this issue, to be honest. Like, that just really astounds me sometimes because it just seems so obvious and it's so upsetting that people would just be so, yeah, on that. It's kind of crazy to me. But I don't know. I just feel like some people kind of also try to make this like, oh, it's just a political issue. I mean, just like you talked about, everything is spiritual, right? I mean, all of this is a spiritual issue. The enemy wants to cause confusion and chaos. But how do we kind of face people? And there are probably some Christians who might say this too, like, oh, that's a political issue, I shouldn't touch it. But how should we encourage them? Like, no, this is actually about just protecting women. You know, what would you say to those people?
Yeah, to those that say this is a political issue, I always love to remind them that this is a biblical issue that the world has put under the guise of politics to get Christians to not talk about it. They know, because that's been what the message has been for years. Christian, don't get involved in politics. Christians, don't talk about politics. All I'm saying here is that girls should be protected, girls should be safe, and we shouldn't be lying to people that they can be whatever sex they want, because then we're telling people that God makes mistakes. As a Christian, I don't believe God makes any mistakes. And I mean, the Bible's very clear on that. And so this is 100% a biblical issue. You know, there's ways to talk about it with non-Christians to make sure they understand why this is an issue as well. But for the Christians that want to say this is politics, it's not. When girls are coming up to me crying because they're losing their spots due to a male, when girls are coming up to me distressed because there's been a boy in the locker room watching them undress, when parents are coming up to me not sure what to do because boys are in the bathrooms at school with their girls, that's not politics. That is wrong. That's evil, truly. And as Christians, we need to stand up against this injustice, and we need to stand up against it with the biblical knowledge that the Bible's on our side on this issue.
Yeah. So when you have a young woman come to you who is upset and having to deal with this issue, maybe feeling discouraged, what kind of encouragement do you give?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing they always need to hear is that we are here for them, we are here with them, and that they have our support. Because in those moments, you can tell they feel alone, they feel confused, because at the end of the day, this is happening because the adults in the room have let it happen. That's why this is happening. The leadership in the room is letting it happen. So when a girl is having to face a boy in sports, she doesn't know what to do because at the end of the day, the people that she thought were going to protect her in sports are the ones that are allowing this to happen. So if anyone listening has someone come up to them and they're like crying to them, they're stressed, they don't know what to do because of these situations, just let them know that you support them in whatever decision they make, whether they decide to not play the game because of it, whether they decide that they want to vocally take a stand against this, let them know that you have their back, because I think a lot of them are feeling like alone right now and not sure who's really there to protect them. Mm-hmm. And so I also express to them all the time that I'm heartbroken for them and I'm so sorry for what they're going through, because I couldn't imagine going into some of the biggest tournaments of my life when I was playing soccer and then having to think about a male being there. There's already enough to think about. Did I sleep enough? Did I train hard enough? Did I eat the right food? Did I do this? Did I do that? Am I going to perform at my best? Like, there's so much to think about. And so I express to them that I'm heartbroken for them and I'm here and ready to stand with them. And then just kind of see what they want to do. You know, I tell them, do you want to take a vocal stand on this on social media? Is that what you want to do? Do you want to sit out of the game and make a stand there? What do you want to do? Do you want to look into a lawsuit? How do you want to go about this? And, you know, a lot of them don't know what to do either. So it's making sure they're aware of the options. And then making sure they don't feel like someone is just saying, all right, let's get this video up on social media so we can get a bunch of views and blow this thing up. But making sure they understand that pushing this on social media is going to help put an end to this, and understanding where they're at, what they're comfortable with doing, and just, again, giving them the opportunity to express their feelings and just kind of sit alongside them and give them the options of what they can do next and take it from there.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've kind of found a community of advocates alongside you in this fight? And I also just want to know if, these young girls, like we're just talking about, if they kind of feel alone in this, going, man, I just want to be able to go play my sport. And I don't know if maybe my other teammates feel the same way that I do, feeling comfortable with this. I just want to encourage them as well that they can find community. So I'm just curious what you found in that and how you would encourage them to find people as well.
Yes, I've found a huge community in this. When I've said, like, sometimes you're going to lose friends and things like that, I'm telling you, you gain so much more. Just this past weekend, we had in Southern California a boy competing in the girls' track meet, and he was in 3 events. And these girls called me up and they said, we're not okay with this. We want to bring light to this. We want to bring attention to this so people know what's happening. And maybe 3 years ago, I thought, okay, I can come and support you, but I don't know who I can bring. Like, I don't know. And the community in California about Save Girl Sports is just so amazing. I was able to reach out to like 5 or 6 different Save Girl Sports group messages I'm in. And we ended up getting at least 30 to 45 people there this weekend to support the girls. And these are moms and dads that have their own kids, have their own lives. And they're busy with sports of their own and activities of their own that took time out of their days to come and support these girls. And so the community there is large. I'm having girls that I've grown up playing soccer with that I haven't heard from in 10 years, just because, you lose touch, but you're still Instagram friends and things like that. And getting messages from them, thank you so much for standing up for this. Thank you so much for standing up for girls. And it just, you really recognize that, again, people agree on this issue. This is an issue that most of the people are going to be supportive and ready to stand alongside you on. And then these girls, I mean, just again, this past weekend, they went into the event. They were kind of going into the weekend. Are we the only 2 girls that aren't okay with this boy competing? And by the end of the weekend, it was so fun to watch. So there's 2 girls from another school district that weren't competing in these events, but they also run a track and field, and they have had to deal with a boy on their team. They came on their Saturday off. After they had practice in the morning, they came over to another county to come to the track meet to support those girls. They had never met these girls. They've never talked to these girls. But what these girls were going through this past Saturday is what the other girls had to go through already. When they came to support them, it was such a beautiful sight to see, honestly. Then there was a group of girls talking and they were introducing themselves and they were like, what school are you at? I'm at this school. What event are you running? I'm running this. Oh, are you having to run against a boy? And just watching girls from other school districts that would normally be there in like a complete, like, you're the enemy mode, because they're there to compete against each other. I mean, you can be friendly and fun and all that before the meet, after the meet, but during the meet, it's normally like, no, you're the competition. We're not here to make jokes. And to watch them just like introduce each other and say, I'm from this school and this school district, and this is what I run, and I'm here to support you, and thanks for being here to support me. And it was so fun to watch the girls come together. And by the end of the day, there was so many athletes walking around with these pink Protect Girls sports shirts. I mean, these girls were then getting the cell phone numbers of each other and connecting, and how can we come together to stand up against this? And so there is so much community there, and people are ready to come together. And it's sad that this is the thing that's uniting people, but I'm really glad the girls are coming together to stand up for what's right.
That is so encouraging to hear and gives me a lot of hope. And I'm sure will give a lot of people listening a lot of hope as well for the future of this. And so just kind of looking ahead, what are some goals that you have for the future of this movement? And then how can young people, how can believers kind of get involved to help make an impact?
Yeah, so obviously the main goal is for this issue to be completely over. Random people on social media like to say like, oh, Sophia loves that this is happening because it keeps her in a job. No, I'm trying to work myself out of a job. I don't want I'm looking forward to the day that like I get to go to a Saturday sports event because it's my kids competing and I'm there to be there with them, and not because I have to go because there's a male competing and girls need support. And so at the end of the day, the goal is, one, to get this back to we're not trying to create this whole new thing. We're just trying to get it back to what it was, boys sports and girls sports. This wasn't a controversial idea and anytime until the past 5 or 6 years. And so we're just trying to get it back to that, making sure Title IX is followed to what it is meant to be, to protect female and girls' opportunities. And then, but outside of that, another goal is to make sure some of these boys that are, a lot of these high school boys or junior high boys, they're victims to this ideology as well. And whether or not they make that switch because they know, okay, I wasn't that great of a male athlete, but I can get in the top 10 here, or whether it's because they're suffering from this ideology, they are victims to it by the adults in their life, by the teachers in their life, by anyone that's pushing this messaging to them that they were born in the wrong body and that they're a mistake. And so as much as I want to see this whole issue of boys and girls sports come to an end, I think there's also a cultural shift we need to be changed, to have people recognize that they weren't a mistake, that they weren't born in the wrong body, and really help with these boys that are struggling with this ideology that they're victims to. And so I think that's where, as Christians, we really need to come into play as, yes, we need to be praying over these girls and reaching out to these girls. But we also need to be praying for the boys that are wrapped up in this ideology. And again, whether it's something they're doing just to win, or whether it's something because they've bought into that they are a girl, and again, they're not, but they might have bought into that. We need to be praying for them, praying for whatever mental health issues they are going through, and praying that someone in their life will stand up and tell them the truth and stand for them in that truth. And so I would love to see that also come to an end as a result of this. And so, yes, we can change things through lawsuits, we can change things through policy, but once our culture has become so inundated with this issue, which it really has, we now have to see a cultural shift. We can say, okay, I want to legally put an end to this, but things will continue to happen until we get culture to recognize the truth. And I think that starts with the Christians. We are the one group that has the truth. I mean, we're the one group that you go try out anything else, whether it's a different religion, whether it's all this different stuff that's happening in culture. It's always, what's your identity? Tell me your identity. Go find your identity. I think your identity is this. In Christianity, we're the one group of people that don't have to go searching for our identity, because God makes it clear that we're daughters and sons of Christ. God gives us our identity, and I think that's so freeing. And so when we have that truth, when we're free in that, we need to make sure we're now telling the rest of the community about that, making sure they recognize that, hey, you might not believe in God right now, but He made you and He loves you, and you're a daughter of His, or you are a son of His. And so that's where the Christians really need to step in and help with where culture is going on this issue. So I'd love to see this whole issue eventually be put to an end. And I think we'll look back, and there's going to be a lot of groups that fought to put this to an end. I'm actually working with a lot of women that are atheist or not religious, that are really working to save girls' sports. And they're doing a phenomenal job. But we're not going to solve this issue till the Christians start speaking up about the truth and the love of God in it. And so that's like in California, our goal right now is to get CIF, the governing body of high school sports, to fix their policies. Their policies allow boys and girls sports. And so we have to, as much as we're like, we just want this to end completely, you have to have a realistic game plan of what are the steps to do so. And so right now in California, we are urging CIF to fix their policies, to follow Title IX, and to not be following state law, because Title IX supersedes that. And so we've just put together a petition, trying to get local people to sign this petition that we'll hand over to CIF. It's been up for a week, and we're almost at 10,000 signatures. And so for CIF to see where Californians stand and where the nation stands on this is extremely important. And so that's where I think we'll see the next big move in California, is getting CIF to hopefully do what's right on this. Hopefully we'll see the federal administration come in to California and make some changes here. But the ultimate battle is to get boys completely out of sports, and for these children to recognize that they weren't made or born as a mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you bring up identity, because that is just a huge thing I love to talk about with our young adult initiative, 1630, because I just feel like our generation in particular is being hit so heavily with this identity crisis. You know, there's just so much information out there, being told so much about this is who you are, this is what you should think, what you should do. Just with social media and technology, you know, that's just, escalated because of that. And so just really want to encourage people, like, we have to go back to biblical truth first and foremost, just like you talked about. I mean, if we know who God is first and foremost, then we can know who we are in Him. I mean, we can't be separated from him, right? He's the creator and we are the created. And so it's just vital that we understand that, and then we can figure out what he called us to do and live out our purpose. And that's where we'll be the most fulfilled. So I love that you brought that up. That's awesome. Well, just any last thoughts for the young men and women, both alike, listening to this right now?
Yeah, I really want to encourage the young men and women right now that are thinking, okay, I'm maybe out of sports, so it's not affecting me, and I don't have kids, so I'm not really affected by this yet. And so I'm gonna keep making sure I like that Instagram post that says Save Girls Sports, and I'm gonna tell people like, yeah, I agree, but it's not really affecting me, so I don't need to do much about it. I want to encourage you young men and women that maybe are thinking that or aren't really thinking that it's necessary to stand up and do something about this right now, that the main reason I stand up against this is, one, like, I see how much this is heartbreaking to girls and what it's doing to girls. But when I have kids, I know how much busier my life is going to be. And by the time I have kids, I want to be like, this issue's done and solved because I put that work in already and we won this battle. And now my kids get to have the same opportunities I had. And I think about it again, this past Saturday at the track meet, there were parents that were like, I can only be there for an hour because I have to be here for my kid and I have to pick up this car for my kid and I have to do this and that. I was like, I don't have kids. I'll be here. I can be here all day. I can stand with these girls. I can. And so take that opportunity of, okay, I'm young. I have the energy. I have the time. I can step in and do something because this is going to affect your future children, your future family, and things aren't going to change if we don't stand up now. And so just really encouraging you to stand up now, do what's right now, because we shouldn't have to wait for things to directly affect us to stand up against it, especially when the Bible is clear on where we should stand on it. And again, just a reminder that it's freeing to say the truth. So say the truth, speak up against this. And I bet you if you start having those conversations, or if you've never shared anything about this on social media, go find one Save Girl Sports video, post, something that you like on Instagram. I bet you if you put that to your Instagram story, you'll see a bunch of Instagram story likes, and you'll see a bunch of people that you never thought would maybe agree with you or where they stood on this issue that would be like, this video is great, or thank you for speaking out against this, and really just kind of find that community of people that are ready to join this battle with you. So yeah, get involved and stand up for what's right while we have the time and energy to do it.
Well, Sophia, thank you so much for being here and just sharing your heart on this issue and for encouraging girls, your work in California, and just for speaking truth to everyone across the country. We really appreciate your work on this issue and thankful that you got to be here today.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining us today as we discuss with Sophia Lorey the importance of protecting women and Save Girls Sports. And thank you for letting us be part of your life as you become all that God has called you to be. Be sure to like, subscribe, download our episodes, share them with a friend. You can follow us on social media at CE_1630 to see what we're up to, and check out our website, ce1630.org, to learn more about our programs, including our Washington, D.C. trip, free classes, and more. 1630 is an initiative of Christians Engaged, a ministry of Family Policy Alliance Foundation. Please consider supporting the ministry at ce1630.org or christiansengaged.org. Your support empowers this work. We'll see you next time.